everyone, and welcome back to CryptoCadet Academy. On this lesson, we are going to talk about claim contracts. Now, claim contracts are just a name that I've given for a contract that you would use that allows your users or your token holders to come in and be able to do exactly what that says, which is be able to claim something that's being held in that contract. Now, the particular instance that I'm going to use in the contract today is, let's say you're in a situation where something went wrong and the mint failed or the project failed for whatever reason. And I've had this happen before on projects that I've come in needing to salvage, which is they minted a few, but they didn't reach anywhere near their goals. Now they're trying to figure out a way to relaunch the project, but still not have the holders that participated initially. Basically try to have a way where they can be a part of the new project, but they don't have to pay anything besides gas, that is. So in this claim contract, what you can think of it as is, how do I salvage a project and kind of just have people input their old tokens or burn their old tokens in order to receive new ones that belong to the new collection. And we're going to accomplish this with a couple different pieces. The first is going to be, we're going to talk about interfaces briefly. I know on a couple of other videos I do touch on this quite a bit in detail, so you can check those videos out as well. But we will be using an interface in order to track what tokens they have in their wallet by ID. So I'm going to show you how to implement those. Next is a pretty important function called on ERC 721 received, which we're going to go into a bit more detail in terms of something called supports interface and what exactly these ERC 721s are doing. Now, there's a very important step that we're going to run into when it comes to building this claim contract, and that is if you are transferring NFTs to a contract and not another human or not another wallet that's owned by a human, it needs to have this on ERC 721 received function, because if it doesn't, the NFTs are going to get stuck. So I'm going to go into great detail in terms of what to implement and exactly what it is, so you can kind of understand the background of it. Lastly, burning unburnable tokens. So you may know by now that if you are using something like ERC 721 standard, the issue there is that you are not allowed to transfer tokens to the zero address. So we're going to show you how to get around that. And it's going to be a pretty important component in terms of building this claim contract where a person can burn their old version and they can receive their new version and just keep everything moving along. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump in. You can get the source code and follow along at home by going to the CryptoCadet Academy GitHub. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is we want to build those interfaces. So the interface I'm going to use is going to be called IERC 721A, which is an extension of our ERC 721. And ERC 721A was, I believe, popularized because it allowed for more gas efficient mints. So we're going to be drawing, the particular contract that we're going to be using is going to draw from that ERC 721 contract. Okay. also need to check balance. And again, I'll be able to show you, these are all functions that belong to ERC 721A. So because we know that they belong to ERC 721A, we know that as long as they're in that contract, we can call them using this interface, and that's what an interface is. Okay, and we only really need those 3 functions for interface, and that's it. So from here, let's do our contract. And we're gonna need a mapping. Oh, wait, we don't need that. So let me stop there and just explain what a dead wallet is. What the dead wallet is for is it is what we're going to use in place of the zero address. So if you were to look up the dead wallet, it's basically something that you use when you can't use this notation, which would represent the zero address, which if you've seen before, it's that 0x0000, like all those zeros. Dead address, if you've seen it before, and we need this because, again, we're not going to be able to transfer to the traditional or the regular zero address. Lastly, we need our NFTs. And the reason why we are giving them this type IERC 721A is because we want them to be able to use these functions from the interface. Next, let's create our only owner modifier. For those of you who are used to, just putting in ownable, this will do pretty much the same thing, but this way you can kind of get some experience in creating your own modifiers because the notation is a little funky. Now owner, and then there's like this little underscore semicolon, and then that's it. Easy enough. Next, let's make our constructor. It's going to take in those 2 addresses. Owner is going to be the sender, and V1 cast that address. Okay, so let's build a couple things. First, we want to put that wallet of owner function to use. And we're going to use this because we want to read a person's wallet and see which token IDs they had. That's the first step. And it's going to return the exact same thing that wallet of owner does. and just return it. v1 dot wallet of owner, and that's how you use that interface. Basically, we're calling wallet of owner on that particular address. Okay, looks good. Let's also allow ourselves to be able to change the versions if necessary. Only owner can do this. Okay, excellent. Now, on ERC 721 received. Now, with on 720 ERC 721 received, it may look familiar, and if it does look familiar, it's because you've no doubt got it from something called probably IERC 721 receiver, which if you go to the GitHub for IERC 721 receiver, this is where you'll find that on ERC 721 received. But in order to kind of understand exactly what it's doing, what we need to do is dive into a couple things. I want to show you exactly what this means by selectors, and basically what transfers are doing when you're looking at ERC 721. So if you've never encountered selectors before, there's actually some nice documentation on the Ethereum website about supports interface and what selectors do. What selectors are is you'll have a function, and when you use the selector keyword, every function has its own signature in bytes, if you will. And so when you call selector on this hello function, for example, or this world function, they will return their own specific selectors or their own specific byte signatures, I like to call. Now, another way that you could do that without the selector keyword, it says here, is that if you call something by running bytes for CryptoCadet 256 on that particular function, what you need to do is you need to, in quotes, include that function along with its parameter, or you can use the selector. So what that means is when we are using a supports interface type thing like ERC 721 does, so when we implement something like IER 721 receiver, what we're actually doing is we are complying with ERC 721's check on ERC 721 received, which comes from save transfer from. And what that does, if we can go find it, so what that does, as we can see, is what it tries to do is it's using that interface on the address. So the address that we're sending the NFT to. Now, it's important to know that you don't have to have IERC 721 receiver with your contract in order for it to work, but you do need a function that not only is called on ERC 721 received, but it also takes those parameters that we talked about. The address, you went 256, in bytes. And as we can see here, that's what it's looking for. Address, uint256, and the bytes. And so if the return value does not equal what this is, the selector, which equals that, then it's going to revert on an error. So hopefully all of that makes sense. Maybe it'll make a little bit more sense when we put it in code. But selectors versus just using a return value, what you need to remember is the name just has to be the same, and the parameters that it accepts are going to return a certain bytes for signature. And that's what ERC 721s are looking for when it sends a NFT to a contract address. So what does that look like when we code that out? So we know we need address, another address, uint256, and then we need bytes, messed up. That should be parentheses, and then that, and we don't need this. Oops, a couple more things. Okay. Now we just need to return and in parentheses, I on ERC 721 received address, bytes. And that's it. So basically what this is going to do is, again, ERC 721 is supposed to check on transfer when someone sends an NFT to a contract that's not like a wallet address for a person. So you need to have this in, or else your contract's not going to work. The NFTs are going to get stuck. On top of this, you can even, if you have a contract, which you'll see when we do a marketplace contract, you'll likely have something that allows you to receive ERC 1155s as well. That has its own structure in terms of what you would receive. But for now, this is good.